All right, we have 6 o'clock. I will go ahead and call this meeting of the Chartered Township of Comstock Planning Commission to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up, we have approval of the agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
Support.
Motion made by Treasurer Bloomfield, supported by Secretary Kreitzer to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're going to move on next to citizen comment. So I just want to preface this for everyone tonight. We've got 2 citizen comment portions. So you'll have an opportunity to speak now and then at the end of the meeting as well. I want tonight to be as collaborative and informative as possible without becoming disruptive. So my goal, I certainly can't tell you what to say or what not to say, but my goal would be that if you have specific questions you're hoping to have answered tonight, that we could try to prioritize that in the first citizen comment. As a reminder for everybody, there's no decisions being made tonight on the battery energy storage. This is really an informative meeting, and then we will have public hearing again next week, or the next meeting, where everyone will then have another opportunity to approach the microphone and provide statements and everything else. So say what you will, but I'm hopeful that we can prioritize some questions in the first citizen comment. And generally, I'll also ask for a little bit of grace because I've heard from a lot of citizens that you really appreciate when I'm making eye contact with you. But tonight I'm going to be trying to jot down your questions. So if I don't make eye contact with you, it is simply because I am trying to do my due diligence tonight. I'm going to go ahead and read the citizen comment statement and then we'll open it up. A citizen may state their name and address and may speak only for one time for no more than 3 minutes. This time may not be given to another citizen to extend their time. The person speaking has the floor and no other citizen shall speak during someone else's time. During this time, you will be making statements to the board without discussions from the board members, but you are welcome to make an appointment with planning and zoning staff to discuss your comments further. Please keep comments clean and respectful. Podium's open for any citizen comment.
Microphone.
If you could just press the button on the mic to turn it on.
So the bottom of it.
Right on this side?
Yeah, it's just right on the bottom. On the top.
It turns green.
Oh, I had
Perfect.
it covered up. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, do you need my name or does it matter?
It's up to you.
I'm Marlene Jepkema. Just one of the questions. Are personal water wells adversely affected by a nearby BESS facility? And if so, who is going to be responsible if someone has a well issue due to BESS? Do you guys answer these or?
Just continue. We're making notes and then we'll try to cover those tonight.
Okay. What about the noise pollution? The ordinance states the system may not generate a maximum sound in excess of 55 average hourly decibels measured at the property line of an adjacent non-participating property. Will there be a wide range of decibels but still average 55? And how do you define an adjacent non-participating property? Because the wording is vague. Is it too late to state the closest adjacent non-participating property? Next question. Would this facility have fire-resistant casing? Next question. Would this facility have advanced monitoring systems that detect and mitigate potential hazards before they escalate? Next question. Would this facility have pressure relief vents? Next question, would this facility have lightning rods? Next one, would this facility have a sound barrier wall erected around this facility? And I did hear that it will. We are requesting that it be as high as possible, like at least 10 feet. Would this facility use the advanced immersion technology? This method involves submerging batteries in a non-toxic and dielectric liquid, which manages their temperature and prevents overheating. Next, who is liable if an event occurs? Does the owner of the facility take on full responsibility for any and all damages to properties and/or personal health issues due to the facility? If so, we want that in legal form, not just the owner's word. Next, will the restrictions, regulations, and codes for erecting the building be closely monitored and have numerous inspections, making sure no shortcuts were made, putting people at further risk? Next, what are the specified times of day that the builders are allowed to operate? Will we be able to sleep? Next, will the residents' electric bills increase due to this facility? Next, will those residents on city water need to reduce their amount of usage in order to accommodate the best facilities need for huge amounts of water? Next, if there's only one BESS being built, why are there two companies listed on the map, Signet and Swan? They are two very different companies. Next, are solar panels going to
Ma'am.
be... Yes, I'm done.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We do have your questions, though, so we'll keep track.
I just wanted to add a few more things to what Marlene says. I think you have a list of some of our questions that are that might be easier than us saying them, but we also wanted to hear the proposal, and I think we'll have more questions after that. And we definitely are concerned about this, and we appreciate you taking our questions and considering that we love where we live. And we have little ones and older people, and we just want to have a healthy neighborhood. So, thank you.
Thank you.
We want to find out if there's fire and explosion risks associated with the lithium-ion battery systems, the potential chemical releases during fire events, temporary air quality impacts during emergency incidents, light and operational noise impacts on nearby residents, possible property value considerations near large industrial facilities, potential effects on local tax base if assessed values change due to a BESS facility. Questions about long-term insurability, physical security and cyber security considerations, decommissioning, site restoration, and battery disposal responsibilities.
Thank you. All right. If we have no further citizen comment, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from our July 9th, 2026 meeting. Did you not get the packet?
Oh. I sent my wife Honey and it wasn't there. I said it wouldn't be ready, but.
Do you want to hand that down to him?
I reviewed it briefly because I received them today, so I didn't have any items I caught. Did anyone else have a chance to review them?
I didn't see anything. It's good. You can table it if you'd like.
Yeah, we're just going to table it.
No, we should.
Do we need?
Deal with the meeting minutes at the next meeting, so we should.
Okay,
If it takes a minute, we
okay,
take a minute and just do it.
sure. We'll just take a couple minutes and everyone glance over it, make sure that you don't see anything. Next to Larry's name under members present, I'd like to see it say vice chair, if possible. But that's the only adjustment for me.
I don't know, looks good.
I move to approve the minutes of July 9th, 2026 meeting.
Support?
Motion made by Chair Lawrence, supported by Vice Chair Nichols to approve the July 9th, 2026 meeting minutes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to new business, we have 67 Van Bergen Wireless Communications Facility Proposal. Kyle, you want to talk through that for a minute?
Yeah, so this is a continuation from your July 9th meeting. The applicant is present, has submitted further documentation as requested by the Planning Commission. In here, as well as you can see in all the attachments, is our staff report that we detailed last meeting. I believe we also have included here too the locational map of adjacent cell towers. We are in conversation with the applicant and their team regarding like a decommissioning letter. I know Attorney Thal is working through that, but that can be done administratively should the commission feel inclined. Really at this point, they have provided the documents that you requested. So I'm looking for motion for approval. Should you have any other questions?
And as we talked about the last meeting, if you do consider it for approval, we'd want to see you may want to see a condition of a decommissioning agreement so that you can be assured that the tower is removed if it's no longer in use.
So I'll open it up for board conversation if there's anything else that came to mind or.
No, just the decommissioning.
And that is on page 25 of your packet. It's pulled up here too. So they have provided some language for consideration.
So I would just ask that it be conditioned on that, if you are considering approval, condition on decommissioning, subject to the township attorney's approval of the decommissioning agreement.
Okay.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good tower. It's going to collapse on itself if there's a problem. There's a need that's been demonstrated, and I don't personally have any concerns other than the decommissioning. So if anyone wants to make a motion and including that, I would be in support of that.
Before we do that, you had asked me to take that to the township board, the tower, and if it would have an effect on the fire station next to it. And Chief Beauchamp did stand up and speak and said that when they are ready to move to their new facility, that he would be taking his down on the township property of the fire station. And not one of the board members had any real discussion on it, and they seem to be pleased with the fact that this tower will self-collapse if something should happen.
Perfect. Perfect. want to make a motion?
As a reminder, this is a special land use, so you are approving a special land use for 67 Van Bruggen.
Correct.
With conditions
And site plan.
and site plan.
I'll make a motion to approve the special conditions of the site plan for the tower with the approval of the decommissioning
By the township attorney.
by the township attorney.
Is this Mike?
Yeah, it's on.
Support.
Motion made by Commissioner Noack, supported by Treasurer Bloomfield, to approve the special land use and site plan for 67 Van Bergen for a wireless communications facility with the conditional approval of a decommissioning plan approved by the township attorney.
Good.
Perfect. We're going to go ahead and just do a roll call vote on this one if we could. Kyle, would you run us through that?
Would you like me to or your secretary to? I'm happy to do either way, whatever you'd prefer.
There's only 5 of us.
Yeah, it'll be easy.
Okay.
Go for it, Jimmy.
Larry Nichols,
Yes.
Greg Nowak,
Yes.
Sandy Bloomfield,
Yes.
Amber Lawrence,
Yes,
James Kreitzer, yes.
motion carries.
That'll be 5. And no nays.
Correct. Five approved, no nays. So the motion carries with that conditional approval. All right, we're moving on to the main event tonight. Thank you so much. Battery energy storage system proposal. So Kyle, I'll let you kind of tee us up here and we'll go from there.
Yep, so tonight's intent of this meeting is to invite the applicant to describe their project, to have the planning commission dialogue with the applicant to address probably some common concerns and questions that have arisen throughout the review of this process. I have invited our fire chief here, our township engineer, and our parks director because this project does impact all of those departments in some manner. I believe they may or may not have questions or a brief report to give as well. So at this time, we can go through our staff report if you like. Otherwise, it may be beneficial to allow the applicant to just overview their project. And then from there, ask the different departments who review this kind of their overarching thoughts and processes. And then at maybe a later meeting, we can go through the actual technical details review.
Yeah, I would say let's go ahead and let the applicant just kind of give us the overview. As a reminder, we've talked at length, so more specifics to this project at this time would be useful. And then we'll go from there. And if you have the ability to answer any of the questions that came up in that conversation, if it naturally flows, that would be great. Also, for all of the residents, their entire proposal, this book that we all have, is available on the township website, so you can go through all of the plans as well. So just so everyone knows, it's accessible.
And Kyle, we have a presentation. I don't know if it is easiest for me to plug in or just email it to you really quickly.
If you want to plug in, James, that might be easier. And then, Madam Chair, to the just as some housekeeping items too, as we work through this. The public hearing is set for August 13th. In collaboration with the chair, the treasurer, and the supervisor of the township, I have noticed everyone within 1,000 feet instead of 300. State law requires a 300-foot notification boundary, but given the, we'll say, interest of this project, we have pushed that out to 1,000 feet, and that is to property owners of parcels within that radius. So if you're 1,001, you may not get a notice, but everyone within 1,000 feet will be noticed. That went out yesterday, I believe. I have also transmitted or provided a copy to their the applicant's attorney of the questions that I did receive. As Chair Lawrence mentioned, the packet is online as well under the Planning Commission tab. I have met with residents at Township Hall on Wednesdays to discuss the project in length. I'm happy to continue doing that if there are questions. From there, any questions on housekeeping items from the commission while I let James connect up here.
Any questions that you guys have before we get started? Okay.
It's set as a PDF, and it's just, if you hit next, it'll just go to the next one.
Jane, I'm gonna have you come up here to this mic though too, so the public can hear you.
I probably should do that. Thank you, though. All right. So my name is James Hingston. I'm the lead developer on the Swan Battery Energy Storage Project. As Amber mentioned, we were here a lot over the last year or so, so it's good to be back. I recognize most of the faces, both up on the podium and kind of in the crowd. So it's good to see everybody again, and just wanted to say thank you again to everybody for all the work that, number one, went into updating the ordinance that allowed us to submit this application. And then, as Amber pointed out, our application is quite lengthy. So I know that the review process was very involved, and special thanks to Kyle for going through it and working with us on comments and things like that to make sure that it's in a really good place. So with that, we can jump into it. And yeah, our goal will be we'll try to do a little bit of a refresher on just, who we are, why we're here, what the project is, but mostly jump into the specific proposal that we've submitted, how it's, different and in our view better than where we were before, and how that complies with the changes to the ordinance that were made that drove a lot of those changes, and kind of how that fits into everything that we're doing here to develop this site and ultimately get it built and operating. So with that, we can go to the next slide, and we don't need to probably spend too much time on this one. It's just a reminder that, I'm here with CIP. That's the developer of the project, the ultimate builder, owner, operator of the project. Projects like this are well within our area of expertise, essentially serve deploying money that we get from pension funds and other institutional investors to invest into critical energy projects to deliver a return for them. So not speculative, not just a new company trying this out, but a long track record of doing this and doing so in a safe and stable way for the people that trust us with their money. On the next slide, again, we don't need to totally rehash, why batteries are important or why we are proposing to build batteries here, but just wanted to kind of make sure that for folks who weren't at all those meetings, a really quick refresher. There's kind of two ways to look at some of the market forces that are kind of creating this opportunity for batteries. And so on the one hand, it's where we're getting our power. And that's changing a lot. So in Michigan in particular, there are some really aggressive goals to change where we get our power from. On top of that, there's also just the natural progression of older generating facilities like coal plants that were built in the 50s or 60s that are reaching the end of their useful life that can't safely and reliably continue to operate and reliably give us the power that we count on. And so while all those changes are happening on the one hand for where we're getting our power from, on the other hand, there's a lot of changes for how we're using our power and how much power we need to use. And for a long time, the amount of power we needed, it wasn't really changing. For about 20 years, we were making a lot of advancements in things like energy efficiency. So even if we were using more stuff that used power, it all used a little bit less because we were increasing how efficient everything was. We've kind of reached a tipping point over the last 5 or so years. I think we've probably all felt how our energy bills are going up. We all read the news and kind of see demand for power is going up. So that's kind of on the one hand, while there's also all these changes to where we're getting our power from. And batteries help kind of bridge that gap to make sure that we have enough power when we need it. And so they serve a very different purpose than a nuclear plant that might operate 24/7 for 50 years. They serve a different purpose than solar energy plants or wind farms or natural gas plants or coal plants. Batteries operate, typically they have a 4-hour duration, and that lines up really well with peak demand time. So every day, power usage is kind of going like this. Batteries just serve the top of that hill to make sure that when we're getting to crunch time, when we really need power, because we're all using so much of it because it's so hot or it's so cold, batteries kick in at that time to make sure that there's enough power. And so when we're looking at where to build a project like this, a facility like this, we've got to take in a bunch of things into concern. Of course, community concerns and kind of where we're going to actually be physically building it is a huge one. We also need to take into account where in the grid can handle this new asset that's going to be changing how power is flowing. And so we call that the interconnection process. We're 5 years into that process on this project in particular, so it's a very long and drawn out process, but we've gotten a lot of green lights basically to show this is a place that can handle this and it will benefit the grid here. So we got good study results on the interconnection side, so showing that we're not going to negatively affect the grid. We've gotten positive feedback from utilities that say, yeah, we want to use batteries in that area. We want to contract with you. And then we're trying to work with the community to make sure that we're doing so in a way that reflects all the feedback that we've gotten over the last year or so, to make sure that we're doing so responsibly in a way that's going to bring benefits to the community and not make people feel like it's just at their expense. So on the next slide, this is just a really high level overview. We'll get kind of much more zoomed in on the next couple slides, but this is just showing in general this project as a reminder to folks. Obviously we're here in Comstock. This is a 400 megawatt battery facility. And I think one of the questions we'd heard was the split between Swan and Signet. The 400 megawatts is split into two co-located 200 megawatt phases. And the reason for that is really just that on the interconnection piece that I mentioned, there are two separate, they're treated individually. And so they will interconnect at the same point, which is the Jaguar substation. It's existing, it's already there operating. That's where the batteries are going to connect to. We have to get separate approvals from MISO, who's the grid operator, for each of those phases. So Swan and Signet. We oftentimes, because they are co-located, because we are the developer, the owner, the builder, operator of both of them, oftentimes we just refer to it as the Swan 400 megawatt facility. Our goal will be to be aligning things such that we can build them in one mobilization for more efficiencies, to limit the disturbance to the area. So oftentimes we'll refer to it as a 400 megawatt facility. Our site plan will kind of show the two different sides that are the two phases. But ultimately, we think of it as, it's most important to think of it as one cohesive facility because of the way that it's going to be built. So we've submitted an application that reflects both of them since they are co-located on the same land. And again, we will be going through this process with just us as the builder and owner operator. So I mentioned the 400 megawatts of capacity. That's at that 4-hour duration that I mentioned. So 1,600 megawatt hours. The batteries will achieve that capacity by using lithium iron phosphate batteries. So that's LFP is how that would typically be abbreviated. I think we had talked a lot about this some of the previous times we were here, but lithium ion is a bit of a umbrella term. There are multiple different types and chemistries of batteries that qualify as lithium ion. So what's in my watch and my laptop and my phone and a car and a facility like this can all be lithium ion batteries, but they'll be very different in their chemical composition. They're all trying to achieve different things, right? So a watch has very tight space constraints. We have 145 acres that we're siting on, so we don't have space constraints. We want to optimize for safety. And so most developers who build these types of facilities, for the most part, only use LFP batteries nowadays. This is kind of probably over the last couple of years. Things have shifted this way because of their increased safety profile. It's they are more stable, so it's harder for them to enter what's called thermal runaway. It's something I think we had talked about as well a lot over the last year or so. Harder for them to enter into that and then cascade further potentially into a fire event. And so you're seeing LFP batteries pretty much kind of across the board for these types of facilities because of that safety profile. And then I mentioned the acreage. So the total site, it's the what is now the Hickory Ridge Golf Course. The total is 144 and change on acreage. We'll be using about 40 acres. I think it's 39 point something. And one of the major changes, we can talk more about this, and I suspect that we will be talking a lot more about this, is one of the changes to the ordinance was a requirement that anyone who builds a facility like this must make at least 100 acres available. I believe it's as open space for public use and recreation. And so we're very excited that we found, as we're trying to thread the needle on all these things, where we can build for interconnection, for contracting with utilities, for community impact, that we're able to find a site that actually achieved that with enough room for us to build our site and then also provide 100 acres to the township for open space recreation to fulfill that requirement as well. On the next slide, this gets into, and we can always zoom in if needed, I think, just because some of those numbers obviously are going to come across very small. Essentially what we're showing here is we're trying to show some of the major requirements of the ordinance, how we are fulfilling them, and then especially we know that things like setbacks are probably one of the biggest concerns that folks have who live in this area. So how close are our homes going to be? One of the major things that we talked about over the last year or so, again, in addition to the acreage, was distance to what we called sensitive land uses. So schools, specifically the STEM Academy that is just to the north, we're showing we're 2,000 feet away at our closest point, which meets the updated requirement was a 2,000-foot setback from those types of land uses. The other requirements in the ordinance were 300 feet from occupied dwellings. You'll see we try to point out the nearest home in every single direction on the map there. So we're exceeding that. From public right-of-way for roads, it's 100 feet, and from property lines, it was 50 feet. So again, as we're kind of threading the needle on all the things on where we can build, we were excited that, again, really we're able to find a spot that hits all these things and meets the setback requirements for homes, sensitive land uses, property lines, and everything else. So some of the other key requirements in the ordinance, decommissioning, something that I think already came up tonight and something that is obviously, I think it came up actually already with the cell tower as well. A key consideration here, so with our application, we included our decommissioning plan. That included estimates for how much it's going to cost to decommission this site. Those estimates are important because then we are going to have to provide financial, some sort of financial instrument, a bond that matches that amount. So we basically look at what does it cost now. Let's look at what that will cost in 20 years by inflating the cost every single year. And what we came out to was $22.5 million across the full facility. It's split basically evenly across the two different phases. And again, we'll have to put up a financial security, whether it's letter of credit or bond or something that satisfies that to show the money is there, so that if we don't decommission the site, whenever that's triggered from inactivity, that the township can call on that money that we've made available. And again, another point that I think we had discussed with the updates to the ordinance is that amount does not reflect salvage value. So it's not netting down. Most of the equipment, or a lot of it, especially the batteries themselves, are recyclable. So there's salvage value. You can get money for them when you decommission the site. That is not reflected. That's not netted down on the decommissioning cost. The bond will be the full cost of decommissioning the site. Some of the other key ordinance requirements, sound came up, so there's this 55 decibel limit on sound. I think the way it was written was intended to be any adjacent non-participating parcel. To us, that means any parcel that is touching ours that isn't us. So it doesn't matter if they're the closest one or if they're further away. At our property lines where there's somebody else on the other side, we've got to make sure that the sound being emitted from our facility does not go above 55 decibels. So to ensure that, we do modeling based on the equipment that we expect to be using, and we are planning to install a sound wall on the north and eastern and western sides of the facility. So as you can see, kind of on the south, there's much more space going down where the sound just dissipates and is not above 55 decibels at the property line to the south. But the other ones, we are putting in a sound wall. The height of the sound wall was proposed to be 14 feet. And the height helps kind of determine how well you're keeping the sound within the site. So 14 feet was determined to be adequate to fulfill the sound requirements. Another thing that I would mention on sound, typical for us when we are working, sound requirements are fairly standard that we need to comply with. So what we typically do, both for our benefit and for everybody else's, is we do real monitoring on site prior to starting construction so that we know what the existing ambient sound levels are. And then again, post-construction, so that we're confirming if we are actually complying with the ordinance via the measures that we put in. There's, if we were not in compliance, we would want to know that so we could fix it and we wouldn't be liable for it later on. And if we are in compliance, we want to know that so that we have documentation of it so that we can show people, yeah, we've done the testing, here's how we know that we're in compliance. Things like that can be made like a condition of approval so that it actually has teeth in it. But that's typical for us is kind of standard operating procedures, doing pre and post construction sound testing. Lighting is dark sky friendly lighting, so it's a requirement of the ordinance. It's got to be downcast and ensure that it's not going out into the sides or onto other properties. Stormwater management, we have a stormwater management system. There's a stormwater retention pond on site. Basically, we have to make sure that we're not increasing runoff so that after we do construction, we've changed the lay of the land a little bit. There's now not all of this runoff that's going on to our neighbors. So we do that by grading the site and then having a retention pond so that we can responsibly manage that stormwater on our own site. On fire response, we've worked with the fire department already. Actually, Kyle, if you scroll to the left with the map, we can see we added a second access road per request of the fire department on the west side, yep, where the cursor is. So essentially we've got two points of ingress and egress per request of the fire department. That access road then connects to the facility and goes kind of throughout both sides of the facility there. We've got our initial emergency response plan submitted to the fire department. That gets fleshed out in much more detail as we get closer to final, design for construction, as we've got equipment locked in, as we've got contact information with on-the-ground operations folks that they get connected with. So kind of the start of a longer process, but have already been working to keep the fire department in the loop on that. And the NFPA 855 requirement in the ordinance, there's a whole host of things that kind of fall under that umbrella. One of them is training for the local fire department. So we would be providing that prior to ever starting operations at the facility, on-site training with the fire department so they know exactly what is on site, what it looks like, what would ever be expected of them in the case of emergency, and then annually thereafter while the project is operating. So some of that is, those are just kind of some of the highlights of the ordinance. Obviously it's very detailed and thorough, but those are some of the highlights that I think get to some of the main concerns that folks have voiced so far. And then, yeah, actually I don't know if, Jan, did you want to jump in on this slide for our kind of site plan?
Hey, good evening, everybody, and apologies for being a little late. The traffic coming out of Chicago was not what I expected in its construction season, so got to adjust to that time of year next time. I guess what we wanted to also show the Planning and Zoning Commission is the layout that we're planning for the site. So as James was showing, the two projects are now going to be kind of to the north of that parcel in tract of that land that's forested, but we wouldn't be we wouldn't be touching that the forested part as much. We found a way to put these batteries on parts that are deforested already. I think in general, what's going to be on site are effectively the battery and storage units. So those are the containers that you all are by now familiar with. We will have inverter, medium voltage transformer skids. So those are the converters that help us convert the energy from DC, from AC to DC back to AC. So making it transmission grade, so to speak. We will have a transmission line coming out of the northern part, running to the substation to the north. There's already an assumed corridor. We're not showing it here, but happy to talk about that. We'll have project substation. There's two substations here that is preliminary design. This can be consolidated into a one substation that will have transformers and control room. Then we have, we're showing the augmentation yard, which is effectively empty spots reserved for new containers that will be brought on site as the old containers deplete. As you all know, the batteries kind of run out of charge after a while, and so we have to reserve space for bringing new equipment there. So those spots will be empty for about 5 to 10 years. Then we're planning for water tanks. There's going to be two 30,000-gallon water tanks. We've discussed that in collaboration with the fire department and Chief Beauchamp. Also, the mechanism for maintaining those and replenishing those so that they're ready for basically 24/7 for an unlikely but possible event. And sort of discuss that process with Chief Beauchamp about how we will replenish those from local wells. Then there's going to be a whole stormwater infrastructure. So this is to basically collect stormwater runoff into one central area from which we can take the water and treat it if necessary, or have it drained to appropriate drainage infrastructure that will that we identified. Then we have access roads, so that's to help service these, but also to give access to first responders should anything happen. Again, both the entrances and size of the roads and sort of how the vehicles could be operated safely on for both tracks of the project, most closely discussed with the fire department. And lastly, we have O&M buildings. So this is where the operators would sit, and where we would have kind of common spare parts on hand, and we would have some of the sensor panels and fire panels located so that we can locally troubleshoot if needed. So this is really simplifying kind of the set of elements, equipment, monuments that are going to be on site. But I think this is kind of giving a good representation of the sort of simplicity of what's going to be located on site. I'm taking questions after.
So on this slide, we just wanted to touch on how, on the next one, yep, on the environmental piece. basically kind of to highlight some of the work that we've done so far and are continuing to coordinate on environmental impact. And so for the kind of categories that we've listed here, aquatic, sensitive water features, endangered species and habitats, cultural resources, so that's things like, is there an old burial ground? Are there buried artifacts that have been identified that should be preserved where you're trying to build your site? And a phase 1 ESA, which is typically looking for any signs of contamination, things that could qualify the site for a brownfield. We work with environmental consultants on all of these pieces who go out and do field studies at the site. They take samples, they take photos, they check databases, different state and federal databases to make sure that nothing has been logged in the past that is going to trip us up now, or that we need to be careful about avoiding or permitting. And for the most part, everything has come back clean. That we're not in the floodplain. There's no streams or rivers that we're going to be impacting or drainages out to rivers or natural wetlands within the property site. The impact area that we're planning on building in. Jan mentioned we're avoiding some of the more densely wooded areas. That's to avoid things like, that are potentially, habitats or things like that that could be more protected or need to be, protected by different agencies. We'll limit tree clearing that we do need to do to certain times of the year. So typically it's November to March, which is pretty standard in this part of the country for tree clearing, especially for things like the Indiana bat. But our field work found no signs of any endangered species or habitats for protected species. Cultural resources, the map that we have up there, is the shovel testing that we did for cultural resources. We tested over 300 individual spots with shovel testing, looking for signs of any cultural artifacts that would require us to do additional permitting or have to adjust our site plan to avoid. Every single one of them came back negative. There's nothing in the site in the National Register of Historic Places, so clean on cultural. And again, on the phase 1, looking for signs of contamination, no recognized environmental conditions or gaps in any of the data when they look back at historical data for the site. So from an environmental standpoint, again, as we're trying to line up all the things that allow us to build a site somewhere where it makes the most sense, we're very happy to see that essentially very clean from an environmental standpoint. Things that could get flagged in those would typically not preclude us from developing. It would just require additional permitting with state and federal agencies. And so we still check with them even when we get a clean report back. We will check with the agency, show them our work and say, can you confirm this for us in writing so that we can show our lenders, we can show our equity investors that we're not going to get tripped up on wetlands permitting later on. Here's the letter from EGLE or from the Army Corps confirming that there's nothing to be done. So we've gotten all the reporting done and we're kind of working with those agencies now to get everything in writing from them. And then I mentioned view shed and noise. We've kind of touched on this a bit already, but again, what we view as a positive of where we've cited the proposed facility is outside the view shed, surrounded by a lot of forested areas set, I think about 2,000 feet back from the road, 2,000 feet away from the school. And so not much of a view shed impact at all. So people should not be hearing the site. They should not be seeing it. They should not be smelling it. They should not really be affected at all by us developing this site. And so we're very pleased to share that and think it's an important part of consideration for where we do site projects. And then here we wanted to highlight some of, again, as we put it before, hoping to show that this development will benefit Comstock and the residents here. And so we've got it kind of listed last, but first and foremost, always try to highlight what the batteries will actually do, which is an important part of serving the grid to make sure that we can all keep the power on when we want to. When we want to turn the air conditioning on, when we want to turn the lights on, we have the ability to do so. These batteries are going to help serve that and make sure that we can reliably do that. In addition to that, This will be about a $500 million investment. And by doing so, it's going to unlock EGLE grants for Comstock, about $2 million of grants. So those are grants, that's grant money that Comstock would not be eligible for were it not for the development of this project within Comstock. We talked about a community host agreement. I actually don't know if I mentioned that, but the community host agreement was one of the changes in the ordinance from last time, which had a one-time upfront community host payment. The amount and the frequency was changed. So it is now $825 per megawatt every single year that the project is operating within Comstock. So that comes out to over 20 years, $6.6 million. And one of the other updates that was made to the ordinance was that's the total due over 20 years. The township can elect to get up to 2/3 of that upfront in year one. So that would be over $4 million in year one in community host payments directly to Comstock. Again, that would not be there if it weren't for the development. We did talk a bit about the 100 acres of land. So again, that's one of the updates that was made to the ordinance. We were able to secure over 140 acres. We're going to be developing about 40 acres. The 100 acres plus that is left over is going to be made available to the township. I think there's still probably a lot of ironing out of exactly what that looks like, both logistically on how we make it available, the instruments that we use, and then how it is put to use by the township for people to enjoy and to use. But you know, I think we're excited to enter those conversations and really just to make sure that, confirm that we are, you know, have the land that we are able to make available. I mentioned the annual training, so that'll be with the fire department before we start working, and then every single year afterwards. And then on the construction piece, for this facility that's kind of like a two-phase facility, we'd expect like an 18 to 24-month construction period. And about 100 construction jobs generated. We work with local contractors. We work with organized labor. We've already started meeting with some of those groups that are excited about having this pop up as an opportunity for the people that, you know, they're trying to line up jobs for that go from job site to job site. So to have an 18 to 24-month job pop up is a really great opportunity that we're excited to be a part of. And then on the next slide here, this was really just to kind of set the context of where we are in the design phase. So, you know, obviously, we put together a lot of, put a lot of work into the application. There's a lot of documentation. I think it was over like 500 pages. This is for our site plan and our special land use application. It's like the entitlement piece on land. It is not our building permits. It is not the final approval that means we can put shovels in the ground once the approval, if it is made. We are still a long ways off from that. There are still a lot of groups that are going to be reviewing and needing to approve different pieces of our application, the drainage, the roads, the driveways, the wells, any septic systems. The fire department will have to give a final approval of our emergency response plans before we can pull our building permits. So we won't be able to start building if the fire department hasn't given that approval. The building permit phase obviously is a much more detailed level of design based on what we put together here. It gets much more refined on you know, all aspects of it. And then the environmental piece I mentioned, we're still working with those agencies. We've done the initial work to show that we're not going to be making those sensitive impacts. But again, we go to the next level to get with the agencies to make sure that they're giving us that in writing to confirm that as well. So there's still ways to go for us, and we just wanted to make sure that we set that context. Again, this is not some final permit application that lets us go and start building tomorrow. So with that, I think that was concludes what we had prepared. This was kind of extra stuff for if it comes up. So yeah, we can hand it back to the commission. We're happy to be available for questions, comments as needed.
Madam Chair, if I might, I think it would be appropriate now to ask our fire department, our engineer, and our parks director just to kind of weigh in with their observations, comments, concerns, and then open it back up to you as a commission so you can hear all entities.
Sure. Can we start with parks?
Wherever you're comfortable, as long as there's a mic.
I don't usually stand up here. Well, thank you. I feel like you did answer some of the questions. I was a little confused at how much money the township would actually be getting, and I don't know if the way it was delivered to me, I thought it was more like $300,000 a year. With the way that you made it sound like, it seemed like it'd be more than that.
It's $825 times, so we have a 400 megawatt, would come out to, I think, $330 per year, but it's for 20 years.
Sure.
And so then there's also the ability to front load 2/3 of it based on the 20 years. So that's good. Yeah.
So that was kind of a question. A little bit about the Parks Department and how we operate. I'm the Parks Director. I have a Parks Board, and then ultimately we get our money, our budget from the Township Board. So understanding if we do have this 100 acres, how are we going to develop it? What role does your company play in some of that? So I was wondering if you have any sort of agreement like this where you're giving 100 acres or whatever it might be to someone, or is it usually just we give you a bunch of money and then we step away?
I can take that on. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I was hastily coming back to the stand here. Jan Provaznik from Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, representing the development side of the company. We've had several conversations about the 100 acres that we're going to make available, and rest assured we are going to make it available. We have nothing better to do with it. And we really want to make it part of the master plan. Effectively, that was the discussion early on, that the master plan contemplated recreational use for a portion or a full size of the facility, and it is recreationally used right now, so we want to keep it that way. As far as what's going to happen there, I think we wanted to run a more of a crowdsourced approach here, where we get the ideas from the community and from representatives like you and really the people that live here, as far as what would be beneficial. Obviously, there's limits to what we can do, but I think that the one thing that we want to focus on is that it benefits the community, and that it's recreational, that it's focused on sports or just spending leisure time in a good way, and that it's green, or possibly in any way improves lives of the people that live in Comstock. So let's start with kind of that overarching theme here. And as far as what that is going to look like, again, I think there would be more of a debate what that is, what that looks like, and how much money we commit to it. Ultimately, it would be, I can openly say, it will be on top of what we are committing to in terms of these payments under the host agreement. So that has been established. As far as what that funding looks like, that will depend on further conversations. Right now, I think we're talking about a battery facility, so it's kind of hard to put these two things together and run them through permits together. That's also an aspect why we want to kind of divide these two things and treat them separately. And then, of course, I can just mention maybe some other agreements that we have in place that benefit communities. We have one in Minnesota where we're building, a water main together with the city. The city decided that they want to take control of the engineering, procurement, and construction contract. So we work effectively as a sponsor. Here, it would be similar. It depends on who does what the preferences are, and we do maintain some level of control over the contractors and over what's going to get done. But it's going to be more of a public-private partnership type of structure when it comes together. But that's generally, hopefully, answers your question. Concrete plans, again, something that we don't want to come here and bring a plan to the city. We're happy to propose that, but really is going to depend on what the township wants.
for the microphone. Do you have a project where you specifically have acreage that you're giving to somebody and how you're partnering with that to make it happen, or is this a little different than the water main contract?
So interestingly, we do provide easement for the water main. It's a little bit of a different type of infrastructure. So there's a portion of the land that we acquired that is going to be leased, so to speak, to the city. What we foresee here is the land is effectively the investment that we can provide. On top of that, we'll provide funding. So it would be probably I don't know, an agreement for $1 a year or something like that, right? In order to have that done in a kosher way, and we can of course discuss the details again around, there's many layers of problems, taxes, other things that, the moment you put a, X million dollar facility or something like that there, that triggers taxes. So those are arrangements that, we don't want to make right now because they require deeper discussion, right? But I mean, I think reasonably we can promise that the land will be effectively leased to the city for a symbolic amount. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't think I have any more questions for you. Just to address the commission, if you don't know a little bit how the Parks Department is run, including myself, we have 3 full-time people, and then the majority of day-to-day runs on seasonal park attendance. Our largest park is Robert Morris Park, and that's 34 acres, so this is a significant undertaking. I think it's a great opportunity, but just kind of being realistic about our budget, what we have to be able to do, and if we do have the backing of, more money to invest into what facility might be, that is great to hear, but just making sure that we're all aware of our limitations as well. Thank you.
Questions for Director Bush regarding parks? Okay. If you don't mind, Madam Chair, maybe our engineer, Mike Presta from Pride Newhoff, if he doesn't mind giving his overview.
Sure.
And then I'll save fire for their more detailed comments.
Hello, Mike Presta, Pride Newhoff. So when we do these reviews for you guys, we're kind of looking at 4 big things, right? The public utility extensions or connections, the site grading and overall layout, stormwater plan, and then kind of a general wellhead protection environmental review. So for a site like this, as big as it is, it's pretty straightforward from our perspective. Specifically, the utility connections, there's no proposed public water, no proposed public sewer connections or extensions. They mentioned wells and septic that'll go through the Kalamazoo County Health and Community Services. I think there was a question earlier about how this might impact the city water system. It won't at all. And in terms of impacting neighboring wells and things like that, the county health department will look at that as they go through their permit process, but that's all run through Campbell County Health and Community Services. The site grading, it's limited to the area of the improvements. It looks good. They're directing all their stormwater to that central retention pond that was mentioned earlier. That pond and all the stormwater improvements meet the township's performance standards. So you have a thick packet of stormwater requirements. They meet all of those requirements. They've submitted calculations we've looked at. That central retention pond size to accommodate the 100-year storm event and even some extra beyond that. And then they have 3 sediment forebays. It's a pretty typical plan. We had some back and forth with the engineer after the initial plan submittal, but they've addressed all the comments we had, so we have no more concerns in that regard. And then lastly, that environmental review, wellhead protection. This project does not fall with any of your identified wellhead protection areas. And then, beyond that, we look at floodplains, wetlands, known contaminants. What was submitted is a lot more robust than what we typically see. And so we compare that to the information we have. And again, no general concerns there. It's a golf course right now. So beyond that, there's not much to say. you know, we've looked at a couple of these battery energy storage facilities across the greater Kalamazoo area. It's a pretty typical site from what we've seen previously, so we'd be happy to get into any details with you, but kind of the big picture is it's relatively straightforward from our perspective, so.
Questions from anyone? I have one. You say you've looked at other sites across Kalamazoo area. Are you just talking about proposed sites?
Proposed sites, everyone's kind of in the same
Right.
process.
Okay.
You know, Gunplane is kind of they have one going on right now that we looked at as well. Same engineer on that one as this one, so
Okay.
they're a little bit further along in the process, but, you know, pretty comparable.
Cool. Thank you. Okay.
Chief Beauchamp and Fire Marshal Kessler are here as well if they would be interested in providing their overview.
Keep it up or down if you're on top. All right, good evening. The fire department really, to date, has three major components with this project. It's the site plan review, the emergency and fire response plan review, and equipment needs assessment. As far as the emergency and fire response plan, it was suggested by CIP to put it into one emergency response plan, and we thought that was a great idea. It's easier for us to read it. We grab one plan and go to that. So we have forwarded that draft, it's still a working copy as mentioned, to the emergency manager. And they really haven't had any comments to date other than to clarify who gets notified. So we're looking forward to working with that through them more. And as far as the site plan review, I'll turn it over to Fire Marshal Mike Kessler to talk about his process and his findings.
Okay. For the site plan review, Comstock Fire uses NFPA 1. That has been adopted by the township. And then that NFPA stands for the National Fire Protection Agency for all site plans. On this project, we also used NFPA 855, standard for the installation of stationary energy storage systems. And the NFPA 1 references the 855. So I start with NFPA 1, then move on because then they say, look this stuff up in 855, which I do. So we follow 855 also. The things that I look for on a site plan is water supply. We requested a hydrant to be placed at the entrance of the property by 30th Street. That it wasn't going to work for because the closest hydrant is across the street, East Michigan, to 30th Street. So that was not feasible to do that. So they did comply with NFPA 855. They got a couple of storage tanks of water for the fire department use. We also requested that a 25-foot access road be put in instead of a 24. The code requires a 24. Comstock adopted to 25 because of the way the engines aren't being built. We've got a new aerial, but we didn't have the aerial at that time, so Eastwood has a ladder truck. So if we needed a ladder truck, we would call Kalamazoo Township Station 2. So we made all the requirements to meet their specifications, which our ladder truck meets that specification. Comstock Fire also requested the second access road, which they've already discussed, that second access road. But this also has been met by continuance of a road right-of-way from ITC. With this road in place, it gives Comstock Fire a second way in, out of this property in case of wind conditions or if one of the blocked exits are blocked at any reason. Because it's kind of like when I do talk about home fire safety, I always tell people you need two ways out. And that goes with the site plans. We'd like to have at least two ways out in case one is not available. Comstock Fire had, and the three chiefs, myself, have met several times with Swan to work out the code requirements, and we feel that this would be a safe project. Do you have any questions or concerns? There's a lot of other stuff that goes into the site plan, but I just want to make out the key points.
I do have a question. How did you determine how much water storage you needed?
We haven't decided that. That's still in the workings.
Any other questions from the board?
I'd like to real quick, if you, Kyle, could go back to the screen with the entrances to this that you were just talking about,
Yep.
Mike, and if we could go back over those. I just want to make sure that the residents that are home watching this and here understand where that is.
Yep.
So, and if we could enlarge it.
Yeah, I think that's actually not showing the western.
It's not.
That previous image was from the applicant, Sandy, so this is what I have available for us. Unless, James, if I can borrow your computer again.
It was on his computer? Okay, all right.
Yep. I might have an image in here somewhere in our report, but.
I was gonna say it's on like some of the MISTIG sheets that we have in our book too. Like I'm looking specifically at C400 and you can see,
I believe that 30th Street is kind of north of Hickory Golf Course.
yeah, it looks like out to 28th Street and then
Yep.
down to 30th.
And 28th Street, I believe that's close to the power lines.
On the MISTIG here.
Sandy, does that help now with the image?
Yeah, that does. When I was going through this very large packet, I need to find it, and I did mark it, and it was highlighted, but there is a misprint somewhere in here where it says it's off of River Street or River View, one of the two. I'll need to find it, though it's highlighted. That does need to get changed in this, but I knew that was wrong when I saw it, but I did want to see this again because with the blue arrows, it was kind of like, my other question was, the house or the property that is 350 feet from there, is that occupied at this time? Does anybody know?
I do not know.
Nobody knows? Okay.
I believe that's the barn.
That's a barn, yeah.
That's a barn?
It was on the previous site that we were originally under contract with and proposed.
Yeah. It's a storage. Storage space. Yeah, that's as they had for farming.
That's just, is there a house, is the Strom family?
Strong, yeah.
Okay. So you did not purchase that acreage there? I figured you might have just because it was contingent with it, but,
We didn't purchase it.
okay. I like the yet, okay.
We're under contract, but yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. When I find that later, I'll let you know where that is in here so you can make the change on that.
Can I don't know, you may not be able to say this, so it's okay, I guess, if you can't, but it doesn't look like you're building anything on that property. Is that just for accessibility to the JAG station? Like, why would you need that?
The Strong property? I mean, we have a standing option with the Strongs that runs for some more time. So
Got it,
it's still in place. We haven't terminated it.
got it.
Yeah, I mean, it's right now no facilities as you can see our plan on that property. The only other thing that we need to discuss is obviously we also kept it for access. When we were discussing access from the northern side, we actually looked at using an easement through that property. So that was also one reason why we, as we were.
As you're juggling options.
Yes, I mean, we like to make sure that we can use that as an option if we need to. Maybe an important thing to mention is that road that we're currently planning is also used for the the second access is also used by consumers for maintenance of their lines. So we need effectively an access agreement and a maintenance agreement and those things in place before we can fully commit to that route. So there's also one of the reasons why we're still keeping that property as a plan B, so to speak, for the access to that road.
As a reminder to the commission, there is the 2,000-foot buffer from sensitive land uses. So as they move further north, they may trip that 2,000 feet. So it is a radius around that building. It's not a straight line. So as you move north in their diagram, they may run into the sensitive land use buffer. So it would preclude them from expanding future development up north.
Right.
So I want to make it
For
clear.
battery energy storage.
Correct.
And I don't recall also, were those roads paved gravel?
I think in the site plan it said
Yeah, I don't
gravel.
recall.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right, I did read that. Okay, thank you.
Treasurer Bloomfield, anything else on this graphic? I want to give James back his computer.
Nope, he's good. You can have it. Thank you.
I think that explains that piece, and then I think it's probably back to the chief for equipment, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We had submitted, on behalf of the fire department, a tentative BES ordinance equipment needs list early on, and I believe that was late last year. And we did update that, and some of the updates included, we took off the need for radios because we actually addressed that recently through a grant. We also reduced the number of sets of turnout gear. It's good to rotate sets, so we went from outfitting the entire department to half of the department. We did add some monitoring equipment through some more, I guess, learning a little more about it, what other departments have done. So we added some monitoring equipment and added thermal imaging cameras as ours are beginning to age. So I'll give a rundown on the sheet that I prepared for the Planning Commission. A battery energy storage system facility introduces specialized fire and hazardous materials risks to the community. These incidents may involve thermal runaway, fire, explosion potential, toxic or flammable gas release, contaminated smoke, extended duration operations, and evacuation or shelter-in-place decisions. And an emphasis on the last part, the evacuation and shelter-in-place decisions. The following equipment and training needs would strengthen the fire department's ability to safely and effectively respond to these potential hazards. These resources would improve responder safety, support better incident command decisions, and help reduce the risk to the public should there be a BES emergency. So the top priority is our self-contained breathing apparatus, and those are what protects us. We call them our SCBAs. We do have a 15-year life on those, and we have just under 3 years left on our current stash of equipment. Kind of the issue with this is that we can't just outfit a station. So should there be a significant event at the site or any site similar, there would be multiple stations responding and help from other entities. And our SCBAs need to be interoperable with us and our neighboring departments. So to outfit just one station wouldn't work because our personnel would need to have the same equipment for interoperability. So essentially this equipment would allow us to get potentially downrange to do monitoring and make evacuation decisions. The next item we had was air monitoring equipment, and the things that we're looking at was multi-gas air monitors.
Chief, before you move on, just a question on that. You said the ones that you currently have only have 3 years left on them.
Correct.
So is that something that you naturally will be updating normally, but you would need to do, or you just need a larger quantity because of the facility?
We wouldn't need a larger quantity. We would be updating it. So right now we're in the grant pursuance phase. And then if that doesn't work, essentially we would have to ask the Township Board for additional fundings, which could increase assessment rates.
Got it. Thank you.
The next one is air monitoring equipment. Is there any other questions on SCBAs? I should have paused at each section to be sure. I know it can be a little technical, but any other questions on SCBAs in particular? Next is air monitoring equipment. As I mentioned, multi-gas air monitoring. photoionization detectors, and hydrogen fluoride air monitoring. And essentially what we're looking for is to outfit each of our 3 stations with this type of equipment. These allow incident commanders to make decisions on evacuation, stay in place, and how we're going to progress with an incident. Any questions on air monitoring? I got it pretty detailed in here, so I can read it out through, but I was hoping a little summary would be sufficient. Thermal imaging cameras, these are very standard, common for any application, but in particular for a best emergency. It can help with making decisions on, at a more of a cellular level, what's going on. There's monitors on this, but it allows us to, even from a distance or from afar, make decisions on heat signatures and that sort of thing. And essentially, we do have some now, and the service life, we're down to 3 or 4 years on what we have currently in stock. Luckily, the prices come down on these quite a bit, but we usually outfit, or our ideal would be to outfit each of our 5 apparatus between the 3 stations with 2 each, so all crews would have one. Any questions on thermal imaging? A drone program. This is an up-and-comer that's common with many, and it can be debatable, but our thought on it would give us an aerial view of what is going on with the incident, and there could be thermal imaging capabilities with this as well. We've had some conversations with Kyle even about some other departments have done as far as mapping or coordinates, or what would be the proper word for what they've done from an aerial perspective.
Yeah, working with other communities with these type of systems and applications, their fire department felt it prudent to have a grid system, right, mapped out both for ground level staff and aerial drones, and to give them a good reference of within that site, especially for a 400 megawatts facility would be good, so that if the fire department does need to launch a drone, they have specific references throughout that site of where to direct their staff instead of hoping for some kind of landmark. So that did come from Penfield Township's fire chief, Chief Beauchamp, and I have been discussing this in length, and that is an item that we would be suggesting to the Planning Commission for consideration, but I'll let Chief Beauchamp discuss further.
Sure, and in this, what we're proposing, one is an auto deploys drone based on address and call type, and another one can be manually deployed. And this is kind of become more commonplace with overall fire rescue operations. It's not something that we currently possess. Any questions on the drone technology? Personal protective equipment, obviously we have to protect our personnel. So that is the respiratory protection, the SCBAs is first and foremost. But the turnout gear, basically if we're fighting a wildland fire or evacuating, we have to outfit our personnel accordingly. So we do have a 10-year life on these, so we're continually replacing and going through, and as staffing levels climb or fall, it'll determine how much we have extra, but there is an expiration date. Is there any questions on turnout gear, personal protective equipment? Last section we had is training and site familiarization. It's been well noted, but we did document some specifics on it. I think it goes well together what's been known and in the plan, just re-emphasizing the importance of that. So that is what the latest, greatest on the research that we have done, basically doing our internal needs assessment and looking at some other instances that have happened throughout the country that we feel would best protect not only our personnel, but the public that we serve. Is there any questions I can help answer at this point?
Do you plan on adding any additional employees?
No, we don't. We don't foresee a need for that.
I have a question more for Attorney Thal, I think. So we have all of these things that we need, and maybe Matt, you could chime in, like, I guess my question is, where does the funding come for all of this? Because if we're getting $330,000 a year, give or take, right, minus plus $2 million in Eagle grants, almost the entire community host agreement would be evaporated into the need to keep the community safe. So are these things that are eligible for conditional approval? Are they, like, how does this all kind of puzzle piece together as we're sort of thinking through what this looks like?
So what I would say at this point in time is that would be a discussion with the developer that should occur. I don't know if the developer's seen this proposal yet. And so that's going to be a discussion that we'd have to have with the developer. Some of that, like at this point in time, right today, you know, what the information gathering is really what we're at right now. And some of those things will come out after public hearing, in deliberation, conditions, and discussions then with the developer.
Perfect, thank you. I just trying to puzzle piece it all together.
And we have shared this updated letter with them, so they did have, so there was no surprises on it.
Awesome.
We did the site plan review originally, and then, like most, we're trying to figure out and navigate through this as well, so we didn't want to create a surprise at the end, and there's no intention on an aha moment, so we decided that it'd be good early on. So we did initial site plan review, some of the needs that we discussed, and then put this on it. So we did, as we go through this process, we did prioritize some of those needs, understanding that the fire department has a lot of needs, and protecting the community does cost a lot of money. So from our perspective, where it ends up, I'm not sure,
Right.
but we figured we'd get that out in the front, as we did with the earlier version of this. This is more updated, very confident with this. We do have a fire department assessment coming up that was offered with Mike and company. Where'd Mike go? Coming up here soon. So that was offered through CIP to have that, so we're open to that, to see what needs from their perspective on an overall fire department is. So we're interested in seeing the findings from that when we have that coming up.
Awesome, thank you. And agree, would rather have more information than less, so it's helpful.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Sandy?
There's one thing that I haven't heard mentioned, and I guess I'm kind of concerned. Since we're that close to the schools, I haven't heard a word about disaster sirens, and this community has wanted disaster sirens. And there are certain board members that keep fighting for this, and this should be a concern for this planning commission as well as the fire department. I mean, with no sirens that close to our schools and trying to evacuate those schools, I would think that would be one of the first things we'd be talking about with this plan and with the finances here is sirens, disaster sirens, and especially ones that could say, hey, we have an issue at the battery storage. So I think that needs to be discussed as well.
Good call, appreciate it.
And we did talk to emergency management about that in particular as part of the recommendation, and it is inconclusive. So if there is a siren activation, it could cause confusion on what to do. So I hear a siren, what does that mean? Is it a tornado going off, or is there some other event? So it could be something that's specific to the site, and maybe it's audible, but we did contact emergency management, who we thought would be most appropriate to state that. That's more of their world than what we would do. And to date, it's inconclusive that would be a benefit. So I would invite back the emergency manager to talk, and if they don't know, they have personnel for it, but inconclusive from the fire department standpoint. So I definitely see the merits for it. We definitely have asked the questions, but we haven't gotten anywhere if it's the appropriate recommendation from our standpoint at this point.
Chief Beauchamp, on that, has emergency management provided a written recommendation on that? Or has it been verbal? And I'm asking to address Treasurer Bloomfield's concerns on that. Just wondering, and with probably the general public coming up, if there's any kind of documentation we can provide at future meetings of that finding.
Sure,
Is that
I
available?
absolutely could get that. So we've been working on the draft emergency plans. So that part's been an ongoing conversation. They haven't given up yet. They just haven't gotten anything further on it. Part of it could be a conversation on just a regular siren going off or something voice activated, and if they are familiar with the technology or not, if it'd be a good fit. So those questions are still pending.
My understanding, I mean, the township has heard presentations from siren options that are audible voices that you can program to be for a variety of things. So I don't know that, I understand
noise might not be great, because to your point, it can mean a lot of things, but I do think there may be alert systems that, you know, are worth exploring.
We have our fire safety subject matter expert here. I think it'd be helpful if he maybe jumped in with some context. I don't know.
Absolutely. Good evening, Commissioners. I haven't had the opportunity to meet you yet. My name is Mike Stanley. I'm a senior fire and emergency service consultant with Jensen Hughes. Jensen Hughes is the largest fire protection engineering firm in the world. And we were engaged by CIP to address fire safety issues, you know, to be a resource to answer questions, as well as, and I'll speak a little bit more to that of what Chief Beauchamp mentioned about the capability analysis that we'll be conducting as well. My background is 30-plus years in the fire service, retired as a fire chief and emergency manager in 2025 before I came to work for Jensen Hughes. And I spent a lot of time in this best space doing exactly what we're doing tonight, of answering the questions that elected officials, appointed officials, and community members have. So I'll speak specifically to the Treasurer's question about emergency sirens, and why some of that inconclusivity has been found. And happy to, there was some discussion about documentation in writing about that. Happy to weave that into the fire department capability analysis as well as we look at that broader picture. What we're seeing nationally for the last several years is a movement away from emergency notification systems that are the tower, siren, even accompanied by the voice. That they are very problematic, that the maintenance cost and the maintenance requirements on them are very high. So many counties and communities are abandoning them because they're just not finding them as effective. The other thing it introduces is a tremendous amount of liability, and where we're seeing nationally from the emergency management perspective, irrespective of what the nature is, whether it's a tornado, a wildfire, flooding, et cetera, any disaster, that many times what we're seeing is those are being falsely activated. And that's created some angst amongst the community and caused some liability for the authority having jurisdiction. Also, if there's a failure to notify, that's still dependent on human activation. That somebody typically in your communications, regional communications center, your 911 center, has to activate that. And if they fail to do that, like I said, the liability profile is immense. And again, the technology being what it is, and the maintenance issues when it fails to work, that increases the liability profile on the community as well. So like I said, industry-wide, seeing some movement away from that. Is it the right thing for your community, for this county, globally, that won't make that decision for you, but sharing my experience coming from an organization that did move away from them, because of those exact reasons. And like I said, I get to travel around the country working with fire departments, emergency managers, and travel around the world, stay abreast of technology. And like I said, that's what my observations are in the industry. So hopefully that's helpful.
What is the best way to do it then?
What most emergency management groups are doing is, one, for many decades, so I'm sure that I can confirm it, but I would be willing to wager your 911 communication center has what's called a reverse 911. Obviously people can call in and report emergency. They can also call out, and alert local residents. And that's becoming more and more sophisticated, where rather than just call everybody in the county or everybody in the township, that they can geo-fence around that. And say, this group needs to evacuate because you're in risk of the tornado. This group needs to shelter in place because of the chemical spill at the rail line or on the highway. So that's more typically what's happening. And that's getting more and more sophisticated to utilize cell phones You know, and typically that's an opt-in that an emergency management organization will do because of the discontinuation nationally of people using landlines. Yeah. Yeah, much like an Amber Alert, you know, like I said, there's different proprietary systems, and I would not be shocked to find out that your county emergency management had that system in place.
Does that also go across your TV?
That's a different technology and a different system, you know, that has to occur in concert with the FCC. You know, much like that, you know, this is a test of the emergency broadcasting system. You know, so a different system that has to be notified for the TV and the radio. You know, and most, you know, honestly, what I see the most of and what tends to be most effective is social media platforms. You know, that they
But our concern is the elderly. A lot of them don't have the latest gadget, so to speak, to be notified by.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, there's still the mechanism to have, you know, local law enforcement, public safety, drive through neighborhoods, making, you know, making announcements through their public address system, you know, a variety of different things. You know, so, and that's kind of speaking globally about emergencies. Reference best facilities, you know, we do not see that wide scale need for evacuation. You know, when we do the toxic plume modeling, when we do the live large-scale fire testing, you know, and I know that question came up from the community members about toxic gas dispersion. That's, you know, what most people use as a hallmark, you know, incident, a benchmarking incident, is the Vistra facility fire in Moss Landing, California, in Monterey, California, where they did a large-scale evacuation. You know, and what they found out afterwards, and they did it proactively, you know, and with limited knowledge at the time, limited understanding of these type of incidents, that, you know, so I'm not second guessing them, but what we found through extensive air monitoring happened almost immediately at that incident. I mean, virtually immediately they started air monitoring, and are still air monitoring to this day. You know, and what the EPA has found, and they have a whole website all about it, you know, and you can go on there today and see what the conditions are today of the air monitoring, that evacuation wasn't necessary. You know, so we're not going to see that large scale evacuation around a potential and unlikely incident at this facility. Now, like I said, I'm speaking globally about some of your concerns about emergency management of whatever, you know, man-made or natural disaster may occur, that, you know, those are considerations for how you notify others. So kind of an amalgamation of the two issues.
Just makes me think of the floods in Texas. After that happened, they installed them. And then down on the lake shore where the tornado took the little boy's life, they installed them in that municipality after that happened. So I think being prepared is better than not being.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that's a local decision.
You are correct.
Yeah,
that's why I brought it up.
Right, that risk versus benefits. You know, if you're willing to accept the maintenance costs and things like that, you know, installation costs, you know,
How much can you put on a life?
Exactly, and I've spent a career, you know, hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. So certainly understand your standpoint, not saying it's not without merit. Just telling you what the landscape is.
I can follow up on one thing with that, Mike.
You bet.
So I was focusing on the siren aspect, which from emergency management was inconclusive. So some work to do, but they do have what's called the iPause system. So part of the notification would go for a certain level of emergency to emergency management direct, and then they can send it out by vicinity on what to do through your smart devices. So that it's not necessarily a county-wide alert. They can go by, narrow it down to what needs to be, and then they would send that out. So again, that not necessarily there's the concerns about don't have the device, not charged. I get that. That's just what the direction from emergency management is. Be on the notification tree early, and then they can make a decision to send out to iPause, and then that they can go by vicinity to alert on what to do.
Thanks, Chief. Anyone else have questions on the fire side for now? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we have an opportunity now. If there's questions that we want to pose, we can certainly explore some of that stuff. You know, we do have public hearing at our next meeting where we'll be able to hear more from the community. I would ask if there's something that, I think you guys, did you get the list of, beautiful. So if there's something that, if you can help us with answering any of those questions too for folks, if it doesn't come out today or whatever. Yeah, an FAQ would be useful. But I do think, you know, there's probably, I know I've jotted down some questions as I've sorted through this, and I'm sure the fellow commissioners have as well. So I'd like to open it up for a few questions. If there's something burning in your mind that we should discuss, we're actually doing fairly well with time, so I'd like to take advantage of it.
Chair Lawrence, if I may, similar to what we did last year with the questions that Steve and his entity were able to provide, moving through these next few meetings, I would request from a staff level if they could continue to provide responses to the common questions. I can then put it into the agenda packets for residents who are interested. So every time we dialogue, if they are able to provide responses, I think that'd be beneficial moving forward.
So you don't have to answer the same question 18 times?
Yes.
Would it be beneficial to have these questions posed online, Kyle, and then answered before our next meeting? So if some are generated from these, we have
I would defer
new
to
ones?
the
I don't know.
applicant if they feel they could provide a response to these questions within their capabilities by next Friday. We can get it online and published.
I think that would be helpful. Again, just trying to, as new things come up. Would anyone like to ask some questions that may not have been here, or?
I have one question. The oil-filled transformers, are they in fireproof containers? Since
Hit the button again. You want the green light. There you go. Whoop. Perfect.
First time with this model. Great question. You know, so I'll split hairs a little bit around semantics, you know, of fireproof. Well, there's really nothing that's fireproof. You know, they are engineered containers to be fire resistive. That's, you know, and that transmission oil that is used is basically a vegetable oil. You know, so it is not going to burn with that high heat, just like, you know, we've probably all experienced, certainly my firefighter colleagues have experienced of, you leave that oil in the pan on the stove too long, you know, it's smoky, it's stinky, you know, it looks impressive, but really there's not much fire to it.
I just noticed in the packet, it didn't say how much oil or anything about it, but that it was a fire hazard.
Yeah, because it is a flammable liquid, you know, like I said, much like your cooking oil, but it, as far as its toxicity, you know, very low, and as far as its explosive, you know, it's not explosive, explosion threat, you know, much like your vegetable oil is not.
So maybe to further explain this, I think EGLE has a standard that they look at for amounts of flammable liquids on site that trigger special permits from EGLE, from the Department of Natural Resources in Michigan, basically. And I think we're not triggering that with what we have in the two transformers. So that's why maybe we mentioned it in the packet. Typically, that's when we get the question. That's why we release this information, is that this is this is not triggering the needs. And we can provide it as part of the FAQ, maybe what that standard is that EGLE is looking for.
You bet, thank you.
I just want to mention that the change that I think you need to maybe take a look at is in section 4, page 13, under 5.0, project accessibility. It says from a private drive off of Riverview Drive. I think that's probably a mistake. And then I have a question, if somebody could address it. Has there been any studies or anything done as to the home values once you are around there? And if there is, could we hear about that or see anything and also have that explained to us? Come to the microphone, please. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, we can certainly provide assessment of impacts that folks have seen in areas where these have been deployed for quite some time. The nuance in Michigan is that I think there was a slide on this, that there's not too many of them. There's about 300 megawatts across two or three facilities. So it's, the data will be harder to collect, but we can look at surrounding states or states in general in the United States to provide information on what that impact has been, specifically those that, you know, have had those facilities for quite some time.
I'd be interested in Moss Landing simply because there's been an event there. So what happens after an event? I think Surprise, Arizona might be an interesting one to look at based on timelines. So there's a couple out there that might be useful for us to understand, because I think that that's also a major residential concern, and specifically for those properties that are quite close would be the most impactful data points for us.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, because we've done this for another township, I think Arizona was included, and the wider Phoenix area that has a few battery facilities. I think specifically Surprise was included, and then I don't know about Moss Landing, so I have to check. But California for sure is where the Gateway facility is outside of San Diego.
Yeah, that would be another one on my list.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. I have a couple of questions, if I could, too. I think it caught us all a little off guard that all of a sudden there was going to be two separate owners or separate entities. And so I have sort of a few questions on that. One, if you could tell us kind of how you got to that place. And then secondly, a little bit more tactical or logistically, I want to understand, like, will you survey and do two legal, like divide the land? Will that be two different tax IDs? Is that how that's going to be? Or is it going to be still umbrellaed as one parcel?
Yeah, so I think the intent for us is to have both be under one umbrella. And there is the option to split them because of their interconnection applications. So they are, by the regional transmission operator, they're reviewed currently as two different projects. And they had to be submitted as two different projects, so that's why we have two different entities for the interconnection application. But ultimately, what we would like to do is to have one facility, whether it's 400 or 200 megawatts, just depends on what the contract will look like for the power. So, and on top of that, we submitted the documentation that shows that basically the ownership is the same, still owned by Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners there, just again for the purposes of two different applications, not able to having those in the queue under the same entity or under the same number. We had to organizationally split that. So, but once you're done with it, and once the facilities are built out, you can merge them together. And
so essentially, it's still all under CIP umbrella, and
correct.
You still are the owner operator of both
correct
facilities.
Correct. It's just, for simplicity, it's two limited liability companies because of them being effectively taken as two different assets because of this interconnection.
I'm going to be silly here, but this is your day job, not mine, when it comes to battery energy storage. So why won't they let you do two of those under the same name? Like, what's the reason for them to not allow that?
So they're in two different clusters. That's one. So the way the regional operator MISO runs the studies is that they have different vintages of those studies. So Swan entered in 2021, and Signet entered in 2022 into the study cluster. And they're different, so to speak, cohorts. It's like going to high school and hanging out with the sophomores and juniors and whatnot. So we have different. We're studied against different cohort effectively, and so for that reason, we cannot studied as a single 400 megawatts, and that's why it's being basically split between the two. And again, once we reach agreement, so this is an inside baseball maybe, but once you go successfully through the studies and everything works out, then the utility can interconnect you, because there's also a possibility that one of them we will not be able to interconnect because of the cost associated with upgrading the substation, for example, or the system itself that we need to carry the electrons. If everything goes well and both are going to be deemed viable, so to speak, at a reasonable cost, then we can merge them with the utility for the purposes of build out of the facilities. But that I think that decision has some time. What I can say is that we do have, because it's public record, we do have interconnection agreement signed for Swan, the 200 megawatts. We're still waiting for the second phase.
So that's why it's phased, because the one is signed and ready to go. The second.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
The second might not happen.
Okay. Last question I have, and then I'll move along if somebody else has one. But several of us did go out to the Coldwater battery energy storage. I think we talked about that at one of our previous meetings. And they have folks on site. They have 2 people that are there 40 hours a week. So why the decision to have, why would one entity say, hey, we want somebody on site, versus something, in this case, larger, say, we're going to handle it all remote?
I think it's becoming increasingly evident in the industry that people, depending on obviously what you intend to do with the facility, how it's contracted by the utility, what you need the facility to do under that contract, what the manufacturer of the batteries require in terms of presence, whether they require physical presence to manage certain risks that you're signing up for the contract. Those are all factors that lead to decision whether you want to leave the facility remotely operated or whether you want to have personnel on site. I would say, and maybe sorry, Mike, you've seen this more than anybody, that more facilities are being manned now to have at least one or 2 people, or are frequented weekly with these O&M buildings that we're now planning for as well. So I think it's the trend. If I had to bet, I think 3 years from now we're going to have these facilities fully manned, just because of the requirements of the manufacturers. And there's more and more also coming from the utilities. And our contracts are typically with utilities. We don't contract or we don't run these facilities without a contract. So I can tell you that one that we are developing in Eastern Michigan will likely have one person on site. So
So it's possible this one will eventually as well?
Yeah. And we are planning, as the site plan was showing, we are planning for actually two O&M buildings for the
Right.
two separate facilities. That can, obviously change if you have one facility operating as one, there'll probably be two double-wide trailers, or there's also, the industry has standards for the sizing of those. It's not like you can have, a large facility with the same size of the O&M building. They really, I like to joke that they go from, one-bedroom apartments to penthouses when it comes to size of the facility. But we're talking maximum two double-wide trailer-sized O&M buildings.
Yeah, I saw the buildings. I just repeatedly in the application, it says that it's going to be unmanned, so.
I mean, again, we can discuss that
Sure.
and it's not, it's not prescribed in any way. It's something that I think we discussed this, and it's been a while, in November, that if it's a requirement, it's a hard requirement, and we have to meet it, right? So it's not something that we oppose, and again, industry is trending that direction anyway. So if there is a if there is a desire to have this as part of the permit, this is what triggers the permit to be compliant, or the use to be compliant, then we'll certainly consider it. It's not a hard no.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Chief Beauchamp, not to put you on the spot, but you referenced a assessment within your department conducted by Jensen Hughes. Do we know the timeline of that? And I'm asking for the commission, would that then impact your needs assessment that you have provided? And not to put you, again, not on the spot.
Get that calendar out, Chief.
We got a due date. Mike could probably remember better than me here.
6th, I believe, is off the top of my head is when you and I are.
Jeez, he's spot on as always. August 6th. We're going to meet, and then that's to get the initial information, and then from there, they're going to do some, take it back to the office, is what I presume, to get that. So I don't know what they're looking for turnaround time, so I do believe, go ahead, Mike.
So Chief Beauchamp and his department have been fantastic to work with, that have had several virtual meetings with him, as we've discussed access roads and fire hydrant issues and things like that. So I already have some base familiarity. The other thing is, do these fairly routinely, so I was able to provide Chief Beauchamp with a list of requests of information that could be shared. And, amazingly, to his credit, I had it back in probably less than under 2 hours and maybe under an hour. So he has provided us with a bunch of data already, so we are already, integrating that into a report. That other things that, we're able to do proactively is, order GIS mapping of how long does it take to get from each station to the site? What about the mutual aid agencies? What are the boundaries of the fire response area? What's the boundaries of the site? So we've already ordered all the mapping, all those type of things. So, we'll be able to bring a lot of information to the table on the 6th when we meet that, clarify some things. We'll have questions for the chief and his staff, as well as, want to take pictures, look at equipment, look at fire engines, fire apparatus, things of that nature while we're here for the site visit. And then probably within a couple weeks after that, we'll have that report turned back around to the client for approval. And then they're usually very fast about authorizing release for us to share it with Chief Beauchamp and ultimately with the township. That makes sense.
Are you, in your mapping and stuff, are you guys looking at where the new station would be? Because 9-3 is the one that's going to move, and it's going to move further away from the facility.
Yeah, we'll look at existing facility and in future facility.
Okay.
In a response, from what I've read in this booklet here, the fire department can't even go in the site without accompaniment from an employee. Is that correct? because of the danger involved with the facility.
Yeah, we just strongly.
So
Yeah, go
would
ahead,
he
sir.
have to wait till somebody comes from the company? And how long would that be?
Yeah, so, you know, for clarification, the authority having jurisdiction, and the fire chief always has the authority by adopted fire code to enter anywhere he wants at any time. Right? That's, we strongly recommend not going inside the fence, basically, unless there's a life safety issue. You know, in the American Fire Service and the global fire service, but particularly in this country, you know, we spend a lot of time and emphasis in training of our members on a risk-benefit analysis. You know, so if there's no benefit, don't take any risk. And like I said, human life, you know, in the axiom you probably have adopted in your local fire department, we'll risk a lot to save a lot. You know, and ultimately we'll risk a little to save a little, and we'll risk nothing to save nothing. You know, so we don't want firefighters to take calculated risk when there's nothing to save. You know, ultimately, this is, you know, while there is a significant investment by the owner operator, that not one, you know, as Treasurer Bloomfield brought up earlier, you know, what's a human life worth? You know, so we won't risk lives of firefighters, safety of firefighters for property. So to your question of, you know, do they have to wait? You know, like I said, we strongly encourage that in the emergency response plan. We talk about that at great length when we do the training, you know, about that risk-benefit analysis. You know, and then, you know, as we alluded to earlier, that emergency response plan is, you know, still in that draft format. You know, as this project gets closer, you know, as we start to finalize that plan, a contractor, you know, to do that emergency response will be identified. You know, because ultimately, the fire chief or any of his staff ends up on scene, you know, they want to know who they can call at midnight on Christmas Eve.
And you would prefer it extinguish itself?
Correct. Yeah, when we do that large-scale fire testing, you know, which is, it's very difficult to get these to burn in the first place. But once they do burn, what we see is about a 2.5-hour ramp up to get it to the highest intensity that it'll get to. And then typically about 5.5 hours it's burned out. You know? So we don't want to make interventions to that belabor that process. You know, we just do what's called active containment. Let it do its, well, I call it, let it do its thing, and let it self-extinguish, and then we go back to normal routine.
After that happens, do you remove all that and replace it with different? Because in the pamphlet, it said it could reignite later on.
Yeah, so what typically happens, you know, what we normally advocate for in the emergency response plan and the training is then post a 24-hour fire watch to watch for that reignition. You know, and then normally before that is, you know, after that 5.5-hour mark, that's when we start looking at releasing the site from the fire department back to the owner operator. We'll still post a fire watch much like we would do, you know, at any structure fire, you know, large structure fire in the township as well. I hope that answered your question.
You didn't.
Okay.
Do you replace that?
So another tactic that we talk a lot about is, and it kind of factors into the runoff and all those other discussions, is, you know, to not dump, you know, copious amounts of water, high gallonage water on there. Multiple reasons why, but one is that the uninvolved cells and modules and racks inside that container many times are undamaged, you know, and can operate in the future without interruption. That if we flood it with water, it ruins it. You got to pull everything out.
It could act like a hairdryer in the bathtub.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, your question about replacement, those involved modules, you know, those will be pulled out of the rack and replaced.
Or the entire container may be replaced depending on the character of the fire and the issue. There's a full, what we call root cause analysis that's done on the container by the manufacturer. And under the warranty that we get with the manufacturer, we'll have a commitment from them to do this type of analysis. And if they evaluate that the entire container needs to be replaced, then the entire container is replaced. It's not like we're running the container and after the fire, we're just going to plug it back in. That container is, through electronics, is discontinued, or disconnected, and is there for the root cause analysis. Until that is resolved, that container is out of commission, and then the decision is either to replace the racks or replace the entire container. So that's something that we separately deal with the manufacturer.
Thank you.
So a couple questions I think were left open. We had not talked to anybody yet about the new fire station location that was just approved Monday night. But I do understand there's a lot of labor coming, so we're going to talk to Jan about maybe using some of that labor at the best to build the station to save some money for, maybe not. So we'll talk later. So the equipment that we were talking about is we really don't want to go in there to mitigate a best emergency. It's really about life safety. So there, in the event if there's an employee issue or something, the rare case of that, they're very well trained, that would be reason to enter and act, but really we don't want to go into this. And the equipment that we identified needing is to survey, monitor, and evacuate if that's deemed necessary. So on our list, that's really what we're doing. It's not to go in there to start touching stuff that we shouldn't be touching. So we do have the right. I can't think of too many reasons why we would. We feel pretty well versed with it, as contrary as that may seem, but that's what we're doing. So I believe, to circle back with part of the list is, and maybe Kyle can help answer this, I believe the Planning Commission can evaluate some of the things that we put on this list to deem if it's necessary as part of the project approval. So with the assessment that's being done, it could open our eyes to something else that we haven't seen, that maybe we do have a deficit on, that could help with it. So to answer your question, we could definitely reevaluate this or go, yeah, we're missing something, or realign our priorities. But I believe it's ultimately up to the Planning Commission to evaluate what's taken and make that decision.
If I could, Madam Chair, on this. I'm going to disclaim that I'm not advocating one way or the other on this. Another community, when they were reviewing their needs equipment as well, instead of having the developer purchase that, they made a voluntary, and I want to emphasize that, voluntary donation of funding in order for that department to purchase what they needed as well. So as we talk with Chief Beauchamp on his needs, it may be of benefit to keep that in mind in this, instead of requiring, and I'll ask Mr. Thal here to step in too, saying that we need to have them provide 10 SCBAs or 50 SBAs. It may be beneficial to have that discussion with the developer and the fire department to determine what their needs are, and then get that differently. Am I describing that well enough, Mr. Thal?
No, I think that will occur prior to the public hearing, so that information can be brought forward to the Planning Commission and the public at the public hearing.
You guys all circled around to what I was getting at, so thanks. Okay. Other questions?
Another item that has been brought forward in other communities on this, and I'll ask Jan and Mike to address it, is the remote access monitoring for fire safety due to alarms. I know Jan's mentioned this multiple times in past presentations as well. Has there been further conversation, and again, Chief Beauchamp, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, of access for our fire department to remote monitor this site in order to avoid false alarms and false deployment of personnel? Has that, I'm assuming that discussion's been had, but has there been any more fruition, or have you landed on any kind of direction on that?
We really haven't pursued any further dialogue with it. One being, if platforms change and that, do we have the latest, greatest? So our thought is we have this tool today, and is it going to be work or beneficial tomorrow and what's involved in that. So we really haven't been. We do have some more conversations coming up, though, but we haven't gone in depth on it. So I did share some concerns. I know some other departments had that, and they thought it was worthwhile. I see some pros with it, but I see some cons against it, being that sounded good, and then what do we do with it? Has staff turnover, platforms change, accessibility, that sort of thing, so it ended up not working. So I did have some initial reservation before committing to that.
Well, that is true, and
Jan, can I have you go to the mic, sorry?
Yeah, so just to further that thought, I think while that's true, that, there's going to be turnover, there's going to be platform development, I think it might be beneficial to bring Sean to one of these hearings, expert from Jensen Hughes that does this for other industrial applications. There are best practices for remote monitoring of basically any facility, as far as what points, as we call them, the emergency responders have access to. So what are the alerts? How are they tested? There's typically a test plan associated with that so that, people are not alerted. And there's also the control for staff turnover. If there's a staff turnover, we as the operator will have a standard operating procedure in place. Should there be a remote operating or a remote monitoring system for the fire department to come and effectively retrain the new personnel to be able to properly use it. I would probably just recommend that we bring an expert if this is one of the questions that we want to touch on, to talk about the steps and the ways this is implemented in not just battery facilities, but globally in industrial facilities.
If the commission's all right with that, I believe that we've heard a lot of public comment over the past year on monitoring of this site. It may be of benefit to have others come forward prior to the public hearing and speak on that, but I'll defer to the commission on your direction if you'd like to do that or not.
I think the thing we've heard the most from the community is just a desire for transparent information. So I don't think information is a bad option in the situation. Okay. Yeah.
We can have a 15-minute session on it with the right people in the room.
Perfect. It's really up to the board here, guys, if we're ready to move on for the evening. This was just, again, an overview of kind of where we're at, to ask any preliminary questions. We obviously have our next meeting with public hearing where we'll be able to discuss further amongst ourselves after hearing from the community. I assume you guys will be present for said hearing, so if there's other questions, we'll have another opportunity as well. So I'm going to kind of survey the board here if you're ready to move on for the evening.
I think so.
I'm good.
I'm ready to move on.
Are there any documents, information that the commission would like the applicant to provide for the public hearing? I know Treasurer Bloomfield did request further clarification on the map that they presented in their PowerPoint. Would you like us to seek that presentation from the applicant for information display? Is there any further documentation, visuals, items like that you feel would be beneficial that the applicant and their team should know about prior to the public hearing?
Maybe the 14-foot fence?
No, that's a wall.
Oh, the wall, yeah.
It's a sound wall. It's a 6-foot fence, 1-foot barbed wire, and then a 14-foot sound wall around 3 sides.
And they have that in here.
Yeah, well, I saw it in there.
would you like a visual? We can.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay.
And then also don't forget the FAQs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, Kyle, we can send the presentation.
And having those FAQs, Kyle, you can get those online so people can read them in advance.
Yeah, another item that I believe would be beneficial is for any members of the public who are interested in comments, questions, concerns, they can feel free to submit them to the township. We will continue to compile them and pass them along to the applicant and their team. And then as we continue these meetings, they can be readily available as well. Because we do know it is kind of challenging for 3 minutes at the podium to get all your questions answered, but like residents have done tonight, I'm happy to continue to pass those along to the Planning Commission and the applicant as well, so we can prepare more adequately for those.
Great. Sandy, did you have something?
I have one. This may be a little strange, but coming from me, that's okay. I'm curious as if the township does not want the 100 acres. I don't know if any of you have even thought of that, but what the tax ramifications would be for that parcel from the assessor's office.
Yeah, so
You're all sitting there like, whoa, what'd she just say?
You asked about.
I don't know about the tax assessment. That would really be up to the assessor, but the ordinance does specify that it can be left as open space or it can be used for the township's recreational purposes. So certainly there's the option to just leave it as open space if that was the desire of the township.
And I'm not going to put myself in the tax assessor's shoes, but typically what we see is it gets taxed as real property. So obviously the value is lower than if you have something that's of higher value. So like I said earlier, when Katie was asking about the arrangements, we would have to figure out, if we put in investment into this, who bears the taxes for this, or how that's treated, or if there's a carve out, or if it's owned by depending on who owns the facility ultimately. Well, that's what I'm saying, depending on who owns the facility, right? Because we could lease the facility and own it, right? So those are all good questions. If there is something, if there isn't anything, then it's simple. It's real property. And we would probably still, as we currently own it, we would probably still pay the real property tax on it.
And then to the commissions, a request from us, we do, like I said, have Mr. Presta here tonight and Director Bush. Would you like me to invite them to future meetings as well, based on the public hearing coming up and your deliberations on probably the 27th? How would you like to proceed with that, just so they can check calendars and maybe block off if you would like them to be present for future meetings?
I mean, I think it's up to you guys. I don't know that there's anything specific for you all that would come up. You're obviously more than welcome to be here and participate, and if there are things that you think would add value, we're happy to have you, but I would hate to have you block out a chunk of your evening if you didn't have to. And it looks like from the nods on the board, we all feel the same, so. All right, with that, we will move along to old business, which there's none, unless you have something, Kyle, unexpected. Okay, any other business? Also none listed? All right. Next up, citizen comment, folks. So you got another opportunity at the podium, 3 minutes. Have at it. Same rules apply.
Hello, my name is John Lozier, AKA Raven. I live on Saginaw Drive. The southern part of your new facility's border is right next to us. We would be neighbors. So we have a lot of concerns about environmental impact. We have a lot of concerns about community impact and how it will benefit the community. And a lot of that will be answered over time as we do some more research. My initial question is, will the presentation that you gave today be available for us, specifically the PowerPoint that you showed? Will that be available for us soon? Fantastic. So we are going to continue to collect our questions and then provide them to the board like we have. And then hopefully we can get them answered in an orderly fashion and everything hopefully will be good, but we need to do a lot more research before we feel comfortable having something this potentially dangerous in our backyard, literally in our backyard. So with that understanding, thank you very much for all of your time and coming and showing us everything that you've showed. And we will continue to make sure that this is right for our community and share our concerns. And thank you again for making those answered and just being polite and understanding that, you know, we're worried about things that we don't necessarily know about. So it's going to take some time for us to learn these things and be more comfortable. But thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one. You've got the list of the others. So can I ask the fire chief this one?
This is really, citizen comments really specifically for the board, but potentially he might be able to chat with you after or can come up at public hearing. I don't want to volunteer him. Sorry.
Well, I'll
Sorry,
say
Chief.
it, and if he wants
Perfect.
to grab me.
Have at it. And then we can, if nothing else, if he can't tonight, we can get it answered before the next
It's
meeting.
an easy one.
Okay.
Hopefully. What's the timeline in minutes for people to evacuate before toxins are high risk? Hopefully, somebody knows that. Can you tell?
That's a good question.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. If an accident were to occur, how is it to be suppressed? I mean, we've seen on the news where lithium batteries are very difficult to be extinguished. So how would that happen? And then addressing the recreational possible facility, how safe would that be? I mean, I wouldn't feel safe having a bunch of kids playing around that facility. And the other question is, I live on 28th, off of 28th on Saginaw. How close is that access road to Saginaw?
Hi, Scott Jupcom. I live in the same neighborhood as the other comments there. And yeah, just a question or a concern for you guys. There was talk about a retention pond. And is that pond going to be lined? And if so, with what? So we don't get, you know, seepage, leakage, that kind of thing. Also, you know, with regards to the two schools that are nearby, and if something catastrophic did happen, we hope not, but is there some form of evacuation school bus plan for those students? We know most of the time the wind blows out of the west, but that is, you know, not always the case. And there was mention of two 30,000-gallon water containments. And what I'm hearing is water really doesn't extinguish these fires. So what really is the purpose of those two containers? Is it like a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound? And the other one is a concern about the taxes. Does this company pay yearly property taxes on their facilities and the land that was donated? Or is it just one, or are they tax exempt? Is that part of the deal? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there is no further citizen comment, we'll move on to updates from other boards.
We haven't had a meeting.
Nothing. Training updates?
No, just again, MAP, Michigan Association of Planning Annual Conference is September 30th through October 2nd at the Kalamazoo Radisson. If you're interested in attending, please let me know, and I'll coordinate with Treasurer Bloomfield and internal staff on getting you registered.
All right. Informational future action items.
We have, Attorney Thal and I have been requested to move forward with some text amendments for child emergency service placements. That will be coming in August. I don't know if we'll do that on the 13th, given your workload, or if we'll do that on the 27th, but that has been requested to bring that forward to you. Past that, I think that's the only really future pending item we have. We continue to work with applicants, interested parties, working through ordinance requirements, potential submissions, so forth. We did approve administratively a extension to the Baptist Church on G Avenue. They're going to do a little, I think about a 4,000 square foot addition on the north end. So that was approved administratively. Past that, there's just been other general comments, concerns, and questions that have come into the office.
For that text amendment, something we had talked about trying to work on was having some information or a person from Department of Health and Human Services give us an understanding of what that needed to look like on their end. So even if somebody can't come, it would be really helpful to have some information of what they're looking for, because when that was discussed previously, none of us felt really adequate at making a good assessment of what that should look like. Thank you. All right, commissioner comments. Larry?
I'm good.
Greg?
Nothing.
Jimmy?
I'm good.
Sandy? I also have nothing. Appreciate the information tonight. See everybody the 13th. This meeting's adjourned.